As in a mirror, the history of civilization is reflected in our clothes. Now, it is more than the second skin, and fashion and style have become a way of self-expression. It is absolutely in style of the Kazakhs to see a deep symbolism, speak through things, objects, and rituals and materials surrounding. Therefore, the history of national costume is a wonderful world, revealing our mentality.
Nomads haven't built cities. Their life was full of specific makeshift garments made of wool, leather, and felt. All things this steppe was giving to the nomads, dwellings, clothes, utensils. Over time, they would return back. It was an eco-civilization that lived in harmony with their environment. Today, modern Kazakhs start to revisit steppe environmentalism. The fabrics were environmentally friendly. Even today, there are clothes that are made from pure wool and pure cotton, or a mixture of cotton and silk. Or it can be a silk fabric, or satin and velvet. Of course, all these fabrics were eco-friendly. They were made from organic materials, and they were more comfortable to wear. Of course, the clothes that were made from organic materials were more comfortable to wear and more environmentally friendly.
The modern national costume has changed very much compared to what it looked like in the traditional era. Firstly, of course, the fabrics have changed greatly. Modern fashion industry mainly uses synthetic or blended fabrics. And in those days, of course, there were no artificial materials. People used natural fabrics only. If we talk about the Kazakhs in the clothes production, they used leather, fur, and woolen cloth. Threads were made from wool. Then fabrics were woven from it, and of course felt. These materials were used in the clothing production by the Kazakhs. Wealthy Kazakhs were also using important materials and fabrics for clothes making. These were the fabrics brought from East Turkestan and Central Asia. Starting from the 18th century, products and fabrics of Russian industry and Russian factories started to flow into the country.
Выбор, как видите, большой.
Organic clothing is an integral part of the history of nomads, and this eco-friendly approach is still relevant today. These days, representatives of the fashion industry resort to recycling more, opting for degradable materials, while handmade approach emphasizes the uniqueness of the product. So how does ethnic style combine with environmental principles? What do designers rely on? And why is it so important to give every garment a second chance? We will discuss this in today's program. First, let's find out what garments and fabrics are considered environmentally friendly. Modern researchers divide eco-materials into several groups. Some eco-clothes are produced from cultivated plants, flax, cotton, and soy. Others are woven from wild and easily renewable crops, nettle, bamboo, and hemp. Another group of eco-garments are made from animal products. This can be woolen thread or felt. Recycling takes a special place in this classification. Here we talk about used clothes and shoes, plastic bottles, and even car tires. For example, European companies introduce these garments. In the mass market, we already see limited collections of clothes made from recycled materials. I think this trend will gain a great momentum. So why don't we, a developing country such as Kazakhstan, become one of the leading countries that will produce these clothes? Just yesterday, I came back from Nur-Sultan, where a big joint conference took place, where representatives of Germany and Kazakhstan were discussing an ecosystem program that needs to be developed in Kazakhstan. Also, two parties talked a lot about the recyclables, about recycling. There are two factories, one in Gorkomtrans in Karaganda. They're planning to produce polyester thread from PET bottles. The thread will then be processed and fabric will be made from it. Factory in Shymkent, if I'm not mistaken, they also plan to produce this product. They have already purchased the needed equipment, and now they want to produce some experimental garment. And there is also a factory which produces something similar to synthetic winterizer. This lining fabric is some kind of insulation, and we will work with them. We have already phoned them, and they are ready to provide such fabric for our experimental project, free of charge. While this type of eco-fabric is not yet flow-produced, experts argue about the details of its production. One of the most important aspects is the dyeing of the finished product. Genuine eco-fabric is dyed only with natural dye, and here it's appropriate to recall how people dyed their clothes in ancient times. If we talk about red color, then they used ochre, which was very popular as a dye not only among the Kazakhs, but also among many other nations. They used ochre. It's a mineral dye. It's a ferric oxide of red color. This ferric oxide is used in different intensities. Depending on it, each time it turns out as a different color. Regular red or more saturated red, or close to yellow. For example, brown. Brown can be obtained from ochre too. There was a dye called tomar boyao that was made of a plant. The dye was used to color fabrics. They also used tree leaves. For example, apple trees or other trees. In the autumn, Kazakh girls gathered these leaves, pounded them and made dye from them. It was yellow. Naturally, in the steppe, all of this was made of organic fabrics. Of course, a lot depended on the people's wealth. Of course, wealthy people wore luxurious costumes. Kazakhs have always considered clothing as something very significant. There is a proverb, "Adam kurkı shibirek," meaning that clothing is a decoration of a person, but the soul is above all, of course. In the national costume, the pictogram of the lifestyle of nomads was encoded. In other words, the clothing featured certain symbols. Little messages were encrypted in clothes, ornaments, and colors. It was traditional for the Kazakh people. The palette reflected the color of the vast lands in which the formation of the ethnic group was happening. The steppe was not very colorful. It wasn't the jungle after all. Hence, the predominance of pastel colors in the nomad costume. For the Kazakhs' aesthetics of colors, it was natural to wear clothes of faded colors, which in some way corresponded to the colors of our steppe. Kazakhs were not particularly fond of bright clothes. The shades were not flashy. They were in harmony with outer world. And of course, the colors have a certain meaning in traditional culture. A white color, for instance, is one of the most favored colors for the Kazakhs. White color always symbolized purity of thoughts. It's a very noble color. Therefore, whenever the Aksakal died, people wouldn't wear black mourning clothes for his funeral. They would wear white clothes for annual commemoration, as this was a sign that a very wise man had died. It was a favorite color among the Kazakhs. And Kemishek and Zhauluk were also white. Zhauluk used to be wrapped around the Kemishek, so the headwear appeared to be larger.
Такая вот форма создавалась, более объемная головного убора у женщин в казахской степи. Также, в общем-то, красный цвет тоже.
Also, the red color that people used in the steppe was not bright. It was faded. The color symbolizes energy, the energy of life, the same as yellow.
Вот, энергию жизни, так же, как и желтый цвет, да? Поэтому именно красный цвет, он очень часто присутствовал в одежде более молодых поколений. Коричневый цвет, коннор, да? Также, в общем...
Therefore was the red color the younger generation preferred in their clothing. Brown color, kongar, was used quite often. Also orange and green. One should not think that it became popular only with the spread of Islam.
Этот цвет, в общем-то,
The color is the color of the steppe in spring and steppe grass. Green color was one of the colors of Kazakh clothing.
Он тоже, в общем-то, очень часто был представлен в колористике казахской одежды.
Here we see a bridal outfit. Basically, each clan had their own patterns and ornaments, which were considered their business card. Casting just one glance at the bride's dress, people were able to immediately understand what clan New Killeen was coming from. This is a costume of the Ural beauties. Its main feature is this shoulder-length blade-like things that were attached to saukile, usually richly decorated. And their dresses were in the shape of sarafan, always embroidered with large flowers, flower ornaments. As for the southerners, let's say, they were particularly fond of the Kazakh ornaments, such as koshkharmiyus, for instance. So mainly they were using natural flowers. Golden color deserves special attention. Traditionally it was used in the edging of the robes of wealthy nomads. The gold thread was usually made from a combination of animal components, precious metals, and natural silk. A thin strip of the intestinal membrane of animals was used to make flat bread. On one side it was covered with gold leaf. This exact thread was used in making this robe. Russian archaeologists discovered in the burial of the 14th, 15th centuries. As for the wax thread, it was a strip twisted around a silk core.
Ну, естественно, что одежда, она была ярким индикатором социального статуса.
Naturally, clothing was a vivid indicator of social status. Therefore, the higher a person stood on the social ladder, a member of the Kazakh society or village, the more various his clothes were. This was expressed not so much in style, but in decoration, belts, and ornamentation.
Сколько именно в украшении одежды, поясами, вот, орнаментами.
I want to tell you a bit more about the change in traditional clothing in the 20th century. It should be said that many changes were happening due to the influence of those modernization processes that Kazakh society was going through.
Ну, во многом эти процессы, они проходили под влиянием тех общих модернизационных
A
процессов.
change in the clothes of traditional Kazakh society started to occur most prominently in the 20th century. This was because of the accelerated development of the world in general.
В 20 веке это было связано с тем, что вообще мир стал развиваться быстрее, да. Наша цивилизация в 20 веке, она
Our civilization has rapidly advanced along with the development of technologies. Since Kazakhstan was part of the Russian Empire, then of the Soviet Union, the deterioration of the traditional village started to happen in the Soviet era.
традиционной
Collectivization, sedentary lifestyle, all of this has influenced traditional clothing.
когда казахов, в общем-то, да, заставили осесть на землю в связи с коллективизацией. Вот это вот тоже очень повлияло на изменение одежды.
Take a closer look at the clothes that are stylized as a traditional national costume. Indeed, it has changed greatly. This is no longer an outfit of a nomad, but the cotton colors remain the same. And now eco-fabrics available on the market allow it to survive another metamorphosis of practicality.
Сейчас костюм претерпевает, конечно, изменения большие, потому
The
что
costume has undergone some great changes because in the days of our grandmothers, for instance, mesh was not used.
кузузату делались именно поздней весной или ранней зимой.
Today we use organic fabrics. They are used very often. These garments are considered sustainable because
Считается эко, потому что в составе ткани присутствует синтетическое волокно, синтетическая нить.
there is a synthetic fiber in the composition, a synthetic thread that was made from plastic household waste.
Продукты. Вот. И поэтому часто
This
используют
thread is often used in jewelry, fabrics, and in weaving.
в ткани, там, в плетении тоже оно тут попадает.
For centuries, clothing protected nomads from cold and heat, as it was suitable for a nomadic lifestyle. But modern Kazakhs have settled long ago, and today ethnic-styled clothes are required to be comfortable when performing on stage, going out for a national holiday, or attending wedding celebration. Domestic designers are the ones trying to address these demands. Recently, we started to make costumes from eco-friendly fabrics because artists are complaining about wearing their costumes for days on end. They can't wear them. They might even faint. That's why we started to introduce organic cotton fabrics for shorts and natural velours. For camisoles, we tried to use natural fabrics.
Для рубашки, для камзола там натуральный велюр. Мы более стараемся шить это из натуральных тканей.
The melody of soul dresses paintings by Irina Nechaeva are made from eco-friendly and recycled materials. This is a concrete example of creative quests of our Kazakh artists, our answer to global trends, if you like. Here's one of the garments that was presented during the expo. This is a skirt that was made from recycled fabric. One can touch it, look at it closer. The skirt belongs to one of my clients. It was worn before. It doesn't fade. The print remains in the fabric. We worked on this collection a lot. As you see, it features this beautiful print. Author of these drawings is Vera Popova, our Kazakh artist. Fabrics like these ones we will introduce into our collection that will be presented on European market. Buy less, choose wisely. Quantity doesn't mean quality, the British designer Vivienne Westwood once said. Fashion industry generates more than $1 trillion in revenue annually, producing more than 150 billion garments. And this has become a global problem. People only use half of what they buy, with 80% of clothes being thrown away in less than a year after they were produced. Many brands cannot ignore the situation anymore. Initially, they decided to partially stop using fur and mohair. Then they started to invest into eco-startups. Sandals, shoes, dresses made of natural materials, reusable shopping bags, and garments made of pineapple fiber and orange peels. All of this is happening already. Another solution was introduced by French clothing brands. They decided that they won't participate in global sale known as the Black Friday. They addressed their clients asking them to stop buying unnecessary things, to reconsider their wardrobe, mend old clothes, or recycle them. The ideas of minimalism and reasonable consumption become more and more popular in many countries. It's now trendy to buy clothes from secondhand or vintage shops. People look for time-tested quality and uniqueness, hunting for rare garments at flea markets. For students of creative faculties, this can be considered as a challenge, an opportunity to apply their talents and revive old clothes. Students of costume design departments got used to upgrading their favorite jeans or jackets. Famous fashion houses are also known for their collections, featuring clothes made of secondhand denim. This approach was employed by mass-market companies, too, which started to introduce recycled collections. It's great that future designers consider the environment. Eco-trend followers are adamant. Person wearing clothes made of organic fabrics is one step closer to become a part of nature. We all should feel our responsibility before it. Another trend that is becoming more and more popular these days is buying clothes in secondhand and vintage shops or exchanging them. The Hollywood actress Julia Roberts and her children are frequent visitors at flea markets. 18 years ago, when Roberts was shopping for her red carpet look, she tried on several outfits by famous designers and opted for a used Valentino dress from some vintage shop. Her outfit that cost $10 was considered as one of the best outfits at the ceremony. Another film star, Sharon Stone, collects cashmere sweaters, buying them from secondhand shops and markets only. Top model Kate Moss is an avid London markets goer. Will Smith's spouse, Jada Pinkett Smith, is particularly fond of cheap shops and market stalls. In the post-USSR states, the secondhand culture has some deep roots. People still remember the times of total deficit, when family members had to wear clothes that earlier belonged to their elder relatives.
По моему наблюдению, все-таки отношение к секонд-хенду еще не в довольно...
In my opinion, people's attitude towards secondhand clothes is not always right. But remember the 90s, when we didn't have the opportunity to buy expensive clothing, so we had to wear secondhand coats for school. We wore them, and there was no embarrassment. But at the same time, there was a mood in society that made us feel bad about wearing secondhand clothes, as if it was bad that you can't afford an expensive coat. Today, the global trend is to break, to change this perception. And this is a great lesson that big fashion houses can derive from old days. Because when we say haute couture and so on, you can imagine the exorbitant price tags and how expensive those garments are. At the same time, other fashion houses tell us that it's okay to wear secondhand clothes as well as other affordable clothing brands. So there is a war ongoing in the fashion world. And everyone tries to convince customers that their side is the right one, using press and advertising channels. And I think that it's up to every single person what to choose. We need to work with people's consciousness. We need to explain to them that it's okay if someone wore these clothes before. There is no harm in this, nothing wrong with that. Secondhand does not solely mean someone else's used clothes. It can be your own garment, an old one worn out, some jacket that you used to wear 10 years ago. You can upgrade this jacket, give it a second life, and this will be considered a second-hand garment too. Showbusiness stars also promote eco-trends. One of the Swedish brands has chosen the popular singer Vera Brezhneva as the face of their new eco-friendly collection. All the garments in this collection are made from organic or recycled materials.
Annually, the Vogue Fashion Night Week takes place in Moscow. I was lucky to be there and meet Vera Brezhneva in person. In her interviews, she often highlights the fact that she's the brand ambassador of the clothing company that has recently released recycled materials clothing collection. Vera says that today it's not important to have the entire Chanel or Dior collection in one's wardrobe, but it's crucial to understand how to choose one's clothes wisely and to have the right attitude towards the world around you. Amid all of this, Kazakhstan is betting on its own traditional garments. The ecological genome that stems from the past is extremely relevant today. Our grandmothers and great-grandmothers used this felt to make korpe and tekemet. They were manually sorting the felt, throwing away threads that weren't needed. Later, I can show you how the garments were made. The Asian technique of felting is still popular in Kazakhstan these days. During the masterclasses, exclusive paintings, accessories, and wardrobe items are created. For some time now, the national airline has also focused on environmentally friendly materials. And now passengers are handed out travel sets made of felt. Another example is felt footwear with recycled soles that domestic designer want to present next year. This will be a joint collection by Alla Chernikova and me. The shoes, which are made here in Karaganda, natural felt, it's all about eco-orientation and fashion. This is a unique product for Kazakhstan. We want to popularize it. These days, it's very relevant and trendy. As you can see, it looks modern. It's especially great considering our cold winters and our weather conditions. And the sole is made of recycled materials. We're now looking for a sole that will be made of recycled materials. We want to make trainers just the way Nike is making now. And now we're planning to make them exactly the same. Here, instead of felt, we will be using knitting with the sole. In our knitting, we will be using these threads.
Здесь заменяется материал, здесь будет не войлок, а вязка. И в вязке будем использовать вот эту ткань нитинти.
A program for waste sorting is being introduced in some cities of Kazakhstan: food, glass, paper, and plastic. In recent years, plastic has become the source of synthetic threads, the basis of a new eco-friendly light industry. Fabrics can be made from plastic bottles, and garments that have served their time can be recycled again.